This podcast is part of the Podcast Arcade Network.
Welcome to episode 65 of Paranormal Dads. I'm your co-host, Pat.
I'm Eddie.
And I'm Andy.
Join us as we go in search of the world's monsters, myths, and mysteries, right here on Paranormal Dads. And once again, we are back.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here you are.
Andy's here too.
Back and better than ever.
There he is.
Got a heating pad on my back, but we are paranormal dads after all.
Yeah, man.
Eddie's sitting over here with an inside-out shirt.
I'm just wishing they'd
What?
put the heating pad around the country because I'm ready to warm up.
It's cold.
I'm getting tired of this cold weather.
Yeah.
Pat's ready to come out of hibernation and scratch his itchy back on a tree.
But really, you think about it, we got one more month.
About a month.
We got February ahead of us, and then it's all downhill from there. Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You know,
You hit
sometimes
Saint-
March
I mean, March can be kind of
March is up and down. March is a little bipolar with weather
you gotta
here.
do a little bobbing and
Yeah, a little
weaving
bobbing
and
and
talking
weaving.
trash with March, but you get through that, and there's
See, March-
April, and you got the
You want a
flowers.
blizzard? You want to be 90 degrees? What do you want?
Oh man, especially here in Nebraska. Like we had a couple days of like 50 plus temperatures, and then like 2 days later it was like negative 12, and I'm outside like, this is the worst.
Eddie, I have to ask Eddie because you said you realize that your shirt is inside out and you just don't care.
Yes, that's what I
So
said.
at what time of day did this occur at?
I put my shirt on this morning. I drove my girlfriend to the airport early this morning, and I got home and I saw that it was inside out, and I just go, huh. My shirt's inside out.
How's that happen?
Oh well. I got dressed in the dark. I mean, I was just like, I don't care, and I just walked around. I navigated this space we call life with an inside out shirt, and I just don't care. My tag is.
Hey,
sticking up
you
in the
just
back.
take that wardrobe malfunction and you live with
I
it.
just like, hey, if the cool kids are doing this,
That's all right.
I'm setting a trend.
Be a trendsetter. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is. My shirt's inside out. My ball cap is backwards. What am I doing?
He's ready to go.
Got shoes on my hands. Yeah. Hey, we got another great episode in store for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the last of our first installment for Alaska Week.
And we've got another Alaska mystery coming up.
Ooh. But first, some recent sightings. So my recent sightings is maybe more of a recent development, a recent like philosophy or a recent like observation that I want to share with you guys.
Okay.
So picture in your mind Egypt.
Egypt.
Go
got
back
it.
in time
got
to
the
ancient
pyramids.
Egypt land. Here you are. Around all these freaking mummies.
We're originally from New York.
We're from New Jersey.
But we now live in Egypt.
And here we are in freaking Egypt. We're in Egypt. And the iconography of Egypt, if you will, some of the things about Egypt. And Egypt has fascinated and flummoxed us as a modern society, air quote modern society. And still to this day, we don't know how certain things were done in Egypt. Like, how are the pyramids built? We don't fully know this. We don't have a real answer for that yet. Why were some of these structures even built? What purpose did they serve? Even unto the Sphinx, we know for a fact that it used to be something else. They changed the face to be something else.
It was the first dog man.
First dog man.
What's the first dog man?
One of the guys at my work was like, how cool would it be if like the Sphinx had like, inside its head is like a bunch of buttons and stuff, and it like stands up and turns into Voltron. It's like a transformer. That'd be the best thing ever. Under the Sphinx's like paws, there's supposedly chambers that you cannot get into, that they will not let you into. You will die.
But there's things inside of there.
There's things inside.
Because they've used ultrasound, X-ray, whatever technology, that there are things in there that are big.
Yeah. Yeah.
treasure chests, whatnot.
So all sorts of mysteries about ancient Egypt. And one of the things about Egypt was how advanced was this society? How advanced was this? And so much of some of the things that we have taken for granted or assumed about Egypt are starting to kind of be theorized and might be wildly different. And that society may have been way more advanced than we give them credit for. One of the things, the flower of Egypt is so it's the lotus flower. And the idea is like, oh yeah, it represents this and all this stuff and all this stuff. Apparently the lotus flower has a certain amount of hallucinogenic properties and allows the people who consume this flower to reach a transcendental state where they've elevated their consciousness is, and they're able to maybe even tap into a higher frequency by consuming this the flower of the lotus. So if you look in a lot of Egypt's iconography, this lotus flower is just worked into so many things. It is all over the place. In fact, they show ancient pharaohs. The lotus is worked into the patterns on their cloaks and on their their tunics and all these things. And it even shows in a lot of hieroglyphics wise people literally smoking. It has a long pipe, like a Gandalf looking Lord of the Rings pipe, where they're smoking the lotus flower, the petals of this flower. So the idea that the Egyptians were kind of telling us we kind of partake of some of these herbs and things to help kind of elevate our consciousnesses. So one of the things that has been a kind of a mystery in some of the iconography of Egypt has been what people call the Eye of Horus. If you can picture this, what it looks like, it has almost like a silhouette of an eye with an eyebrow above it, with a little curly Q underneath. And we've believed that to be a symbology for wisdom and enlightenment and all these things, and not really putting two and two together. More and more discoveries have been made so we'll bookmark that. More and more discoveries have been made in modern science about the human brain and a thing that's inside the human brain called the pineal gland. Right. It's called the pineal gland, not because it's a funny word, but because we're all 12 years old and we laugh at things like that.
He said pineal.
He said pineal. It's shaped like a little pine cone. It's it's a pine cone looking thing, and it is almost smack dab in the middle of your brain. We all have one. It's a little gland. And the pineal gland in ancient cultures is actually referred to as your third eye. Ah. And they say you can even, if you point to the center of your, between your eyes and go up just a tiny bit and go straight back in the center of your brain, that's where the pineal gland is. And the pineal gland, one of the things that they are now all but certain that it does is that it secretes a chemical or an enzyme called DMT, dimethyltryptamine, where DMT, and Andy's nodding like crazy over here.
Yeah.
The DMT is solely responsible for a lot of your dreams, a lot of the things that you are experiencing in dream states. DMT, as you're sleeping, is being pumped out into your bloodstream from your pineal gland. And there are a lot of people who believe the pineal gland is where a lot of these where the soul resides. I mean, that's kind of some of the idea, right, Andy? Stop me when I'm dead wrong here.
I've just read a lot of literature that's talking about the link between the pineal gland, or however you say it, the pineal gland and intuition. Yeah, there's a lot of intuitive people. Not a lot, but there's been some studies done on professional psychics. Is their pineal gland, is it larger, is it smaller, is it, whatever. There's always been said that there's a link between that. Coincidentally, I think I touched mine when I was in first grade. Stuck a sky blue crayon up my nose far enough. I swear I tickled it. Yeah,
and that's how he became psychic.
That's where my journey began.
So, we don't advise anybody to try that, by the way.
Don't tickle your pineal gland with some chopsticks. Just don't do it.
Don't do that.
It's not
Seek
worth it.
medical advice first.
So I want to tickle my pineal gland, but in a safe way.
Right.
So with this knowledge and with modern science doing more and more research about dimethyltryptamine and what it does, and there's people who've taken this a step further and have said, okay, so what happens if we just instead of using our natural body that creates DMT, what if we were to, say, take a dose of DMT and put it straight into the bloodstream?
See, that's what I was just thinking. Can you
Mainline it.
give yourself a shot of this and have like really wild dreams.
So it's funny, and there's a whole documentary which I will recommend to you guys and to our listeners. It's on Amazon. You can rent this for a few bucks. It's called DMT: The Spirit Molecule. And it is one of the most fascinating documentaries I've ever seen. And there was a physician that was one of the big Ivy League schools. I want to say Harvard. Please don't kill me if I'm wrong. But it was one of the fancy schools. And he's like, I want to do a controlled experiment using dimethyltryptamine. And he had people who volunteered. And everybody who was like, I just want to see what this does. Skeptics, people who were like, I'm a psychic warrior, man. Like everybody signed up for everybody signs up for this thing. And he administers in a clinical environment. It's all very clean and safe and all these things. A FDA approved study on dimethyltryptamine and what it does to the human brain when given a shot of it before you go to sleep.
Right.
What happens is very, very, very weird and interesting. All of these people, all the different people, different walks of life, completely individuals, didn't have any sort of like discussion, didn't know the other ones existed. They all had very similar experiences. They would get this dose of DMT, they'd go to sleep, they get a dose of DMT, they'd put them in a relaxed state, and they would basically feel like their body, like their spirit had left their body. They would basically enter into a whole nother dimension where they would interact with another intelligence. And some people said that it presented themselves as an angel type figure or some sort of wise being was addressing that person. Welcome, Pat. Welcome to Dimension X. And this is your true self. And basically the message that all these people received was your physical reality is a temporary condition. You are an interdimensional energy being, and this is the real world. And now behold this. And it is almost a Willy Wonka style, like kaleidoscope of experience from everybody at that point. But very similar beats in these people's stories.
Interesting.
So it kind of makes you wonder if some of these near-death experiences, that you catch wind of, whether it's I guess it'd be in the same wheelhouse, perhaps, as some of these people who have near-death experiences. Maybe at the moment, right before death, there's a flood of DMT into the system or something, or and then in some cases, those people like genuinely actually physically passed away and went to a different place. But it sounds similar. I mean, because a lot of people who have near-death experiences, they interact with some form of a higher power, a higher intelligence. They have this sense of peace, a sense that life as we know it is not the only reality.
Yeah.
And
the jury's out on all these things, but it's very like worthy of discussion and more research and all that stuff. That being said, we have this knowledge now, and now we have the Egyptian iconography. We know that they're a fairly advanced civilization, but also there's these weird hieroglyphics, and people started noticing a weird similarity between the shape of the Eye of Horus and a cross-sectional like right down the middle. You know how your brain is in two halves. Right down the middle, you split the brain in half, you look at it. If you actually take the Eye of Horus and overlay it over the pineal gland and the brain stem, what you get, and I'm showing this to these guys, and we will put an image of this up on our Facebook page, what you get is the Eye of Horus is basically outlining the pineal gland, the brain stem, and the what I believe to be the hypothalamus, the part of the brain up on top that has decision making in there. But literally, it's almost, and this is where people could be like, "Look, that's just a crazy coincidence." Okay, cool. You're no fun at parties. But the other side of this is that there is an active discussion happening: is did the ancient Egyptians have a connection to the pineal gland or pineal, whatever,
however you say
the pineal gland, and the understanding that this was a window into another dimension for us as human beings, and that the brain stem and the hypothalamus and that this and the brain root right here, that all of this works to serve kind of a, if you will, a house for your soul. And that is kind of the overarching kind of discussion with this recent kind of discovery of what this iconography might actually mean.
That was the most heady and scientific recent sighting we have ever had, Eddie. Well done.
Class dismissed.
And I like how it was kind of an ancient sighting and a recent sight. Recent
Yeah,
discovery.
no, we're just taking his.
Is the medulla oblongata like attached to any of this? Because I just like saying that word.
Something's wrong with your medulla oblongata,
My
Colonel
medulla
Sanders.
oblongata.
That's the rage. That's the anger center.
Is it?
I think that's where, like, anger lives. It's like, I don't know, but I don't believe the medulla oblongata was discussed in this portion.
Discussed, okay.
We'll have to see at some point, but
We'll have
but
to. That's for another episode.
that's a
We'll
different
talk.
episode. Yeah, for sure. But hey, maybe take some DMT. Actually, DMT is a highly controlled substance.
I'm sure it
I
is.
don't recommend trying to find some on the streets, but keep a dream journal for sure.
Yeah.
And there's ways to maybe try to kind of exercise that. There is a way to consume DMT. In fact, more clinics are coming out with this. They're like spiritual retreat places where you can consume a beverage called ayahuasca, which is dimethyltryptamine in a beverage.
Interesting.
And apparently it tastes like what you would imagine Swamp Thing's armpits taste like.
I heard it can make you violently sick.
It can make you. It can. Yeah.
I actually have some friends who lived in Peru for a little stretch of time, and they were doing some of those ayahuasca circles and crazy experiences.
So it's not Mountain Dew, sweet tea, blue stuff. It's
No, it's like bubbly brown juice, but like it
Nice.
looks nasty. It looks like it's like mud water, and you're like, gotta drink that up. I gotta do what with this? So there are ways to do this, and those clinics are like legitimate places. Like even in the U.S. now, there's actual places in the United States. I think most of them are in California or other parts of the country, but you can find an ayahuasca clinic and show up and be like, hey man, I'm here to see the DMT elves. That's a whole different thing. Anyway, thank you for this installment of Recent Sightings. My name is Eddie. I'll show myself out.
Thank you, Eddie.
It's time for pop, culture, and the paranormal.
All right, guys. Today for pop culture and the paranormal, I found a website /film.com.
Ooh.
Kind of makes me think of our friend Billy.
Oh, yeah.
Horror film extraordinaire.
Big horror movie fan.
But this is specifically the top, I don't know how they came up with this number, top 47 Bigfoot and or Yeti Abominable Snowman
48,
movies.
that's just too much.
So
Just
many.
too much. So I narrowed it down to the top 10.
Ooh.
So here you go. Top 10 according to /film.com, best Bigfoot and Yeti movies
Nice.
ever.
Here we go. Ever.
Nice.
There we go.
And some of these, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't heard of some of these, and I was,
There's a lot of Bigfoot movies.
There are more than you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there's some bad
Pat-
ones.
And there are some bad
plenty
ones.
of
Pat
bad
and I've done some dives on some of these, and we're like, wasn't that one the Creature of Black Lake?
Oh yeah,
That was so good.
it was good.
And then it was
it was so bad, but
so bad it was good. It was
Yeah.
Couldn't look away.
fun to watch.
Well, now coming in, this surprised me. Number 10 is Harry and the Hendersons.
Wow.
Wow. You'd think that one
Not
would
number
be
one.
You think it
You'd
would
think
be
that'd be
number
up
one.
there just because it was so popular, so
I mean,
well known.
And that the costume that they
Yeah.
had for Harry
Pretty good.
was next level.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
face on that. It was yeah.
But if you haven't, if you've been living under a rock since 1987, the premise of this movie, a family welcomes Bigfoot into their home and hijinks ensue. Rick Baker actually designed Harry, so of course it's the best looking Bigfoot to ever grace the screen.
He's a big horror movie guy. I think he was involved with like American Werewolf in London, maybe even.
Okay.
I might be wrong on that one, but Pat would know.
Sounds good.
It's lighthearted. It's a comedy. It's best for very kid friendly.
Oh yeah, it's a
appropriate.
super. I mean, it's a comedy basically. I mean, there's a couple scenes where you're like, "Oh God, is he going to kill that guy?" but yeah.
Another one from 1987. 1987 must have been a good year for Bigfoot.
Oh yeah.
This one's called Cry Wilderness. The story is basically a boy and his Bigfoot drink soda and help protect the forest wildlife from bad attitudes.
Bad attitudes. You got me yoked right there.
But as far as the Bigfoot itself, it's a guy in a suit and a pretty expressive face is how it sums it up. But it was entertaining. Overall, they say it was a pretty bad movie, but entertaining nonetheless. Filmmakers and cast are sincere in their belief that they've made something positive and good, but every other minute brings some new absurdity. Let's see.
Is it the Mac and Me of Bigfoot movies?
Kind of sounds like it, but won't be winning any Oscars. We'll put it that way.
Dang it.
2011, there's a movie. It's actually called Letters from the Big Man.
Huh.
So the storyline is a scientist heads into the woods to collect samples and get over a recent breakup. But in addition to the meditative calm she's seeking, she also finds Bigfoot. And he looks fantastic with an impressive size and tangible feel to his presence and appearance. So whatever suit and props they were using was pretty decent. It's one of the more unusual Bigfoot movies, apparently. It was an indie drama and kind of mystical, mythical. It embraces the connection between people and nature. And while it never becomes the Bigfoot thriller that some viewers may have hoped for, it still offers something unique and pretty reflective instead. So,
What was that one called again?
that one was called Letters from the Big Man.
Letters from the Big Man. From Santa?
You guys ever heard of a movie called Demon Warp?
No.
Neither had I.
That's Pat's signature wrestling move, though.
The Demon Warp.
He comes falling out of the rafters with the demon warp.
Well, 1988, the story is basically a group of friends who cross paths with some Bigfoots and worse while looking for a fun time in the woods. As far as the monster costume in the movie, it was effective enough, but unspectacular up close. The big guys are simply very simply designed, but find power in their aggression, sneakiness, and backstories. You know, it's from the late 80s. It's a good pairing with Night of the Demon, as it takes a traditional Bigfoot story into some crazy and unexpected places, while also delivering on the violence and some skin. There's a lot of skin showing in this movie, apparently.
Like
so
Bigfoot skin?
yeah, no,
It's all fur?
human skin.
Oh.
Not so much kid appropriate like Harry and the Hendersons.
Well, my goodness.
As 1987 would do. Wasn't it 1987?
Yeah, 88.
88.
Okay, 88, yeah.
Love in the Time of Monsters,
Nope.
2014. How are these coming in ahead of
I know
Harry
it,
and the Hendersons?
Right?
Cause man, it's like /film.com. They're like, when does Bigfoot rip off his head? It's like, no, man, I want the lovey Bigfoot.
Well, the story in this one's basically a family resort in the woods sees its costumed Bigfoot monsters, which is employees in furry suits, and they turn deadly after ingesting contaminated water.
There it is.
So the monsters in this one, they're fake and intentionally cheesy, but a surprise guest later on looks far more impressive. So it's a comedy / horror movie.
You're drinking that DHT.
That'll do it.
Yep.
That'll do it.
So it's gory. It says it's gory and it's funny, and it kind of takes you by surprise. But here
Funny
you
and
go.
gory
and funny.
Funny and gory. Fory, if you will.
Fory.
Was always hard for me to like wrap my head around because I can't. Some people can. They get that switch isn't hard for them to flip. So like some dude's arm gets ripped off and he's like, oh, and they're like, ha, and I'm like, I can't
Clap. Now clap.
I can't get over that when I see something like that. Like
It's like the sweet and salty. You know, it's like
Sweet.
where you get the caramel popcorn with the cheesy popcorn and your mouth is like, what's going on?
yeah, exactly. I don't know what to do with this.
What was that kung fu movie you showed me one time? Kung Fury.
Kung Fury.
Wasn't that funny and gory?
I mean,
I don't know if there's a lot of blood in that or not, but it was hilarious.
It is
but
hilarious, but that maybe is a good comparison. But like some,
I can't remember if it was gory or not, but the kung fu was amazing and
The
it
one-liners
was just
were great.
hysterical. Yeah, it was ridiculous, but it was ridiculously funny.
Speaking of gory and funny, the new reboot of Scream, you know, I heard it's doing really well in the box office, but it's kind of the same. It's a horror slasher film. It's very violent, but there are funny parts in it. You know,
I've heard it's like a sequel or something like that. Is it adult? Is it a remake?
No, you're right. It is a sequel. Yeah,
someone
it's
said it
just
was a
like 20
sequel.
years later.
Yeah, like literally.
Here you go. You guys were just talking about this one, I think. Creature from Black Lake.
Yes! High five for
Came in at number 5.
right.
1976.
yes.
I will approve that one. I
is-
sign off on that one. Full thing.
That is Pat and Eddie approved. We watched
Yes.
that. Andy, you have to watch it. We have to sit down and do it. One
I
night.
might give it a gander. Well, this is 1976, so Eddie was just about to make his way into this
Yeah,
world.
I'm like, I'm ready. Send me
Ready.
in, coach.
So the story is basically friends cross paths with Bigfoot while exploring the Louisiana woods. As far as the creature in the movie, nothing much to report here, as we only see it in the shadows and silhouettes.
Yep.
I guess they helped their budget. They didn't
went
need
with
to
the
come up-
Hitchcockian,
Yeah,
like,
just kind
ooh.
of use your imagination.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny because for the most part, in the bulk of the movie Signs, it's kind of similar. You don't
Yeah.
get a whole lot of screen time with the actual aliens. It's more like suspense, and it's your mind playing tricks
Right.
on you.
I remember Pat and I both thinking like they handled the monster parts actually pretty well.
Yeah.
We were like, clearly they were trying to do more of a Hitchcock, like let your brain fill in the gaps. But it was the characters
Yeah.
in the story.
Yeah, it was just, it was fun.
It was chaos.
funny,
We had a
yeah.
good time with it. Yeah, it was good.
Well, it says the acting, like the storyline's decent, the acting's decent. It's kind of minimalistic in terms of monster time on screen. So yeah, that's
Set in probably 1980s-ish, I think. I don't
It was
really
definitely
remember.
late 70s.
Yeah.
It was definitely...
Or, yeah, might
Yeah,
have
it
been
had all that
70s,
vibe
yeah.
too, man. All
Yeah.
the fashion,
Yeah, that's
all the
right.
hair, the
Yeah,
cars.
yeah.
And you were pointing out like, I had shorts just like that.
Yeah.
You had the gym shorts that had the V-notch right in the leg, and it's just great, man. I can't recommend that enough. It's just fun, like Pat said.
There you go. Now this one, I'm actually interested in watching this one. It's from 2013. It's called Willow Creek.
Yes, with
Yeah,
Bobcat Goldthwait
Goldthwait. Yeah.
directed that one.
I heard this one was actually. I think I started watching this one time, and it did look like it went pretty dark. I didn't finish actually, but
You got the Gibblies.
I got the Ghibli's, or I ran out of time. I never got back to it, but yeah, Bobcat Goldthwait directed it. I think
directed it, from what I understand. Did he write it too?
he might have.
I don't know, but it won some awards, I think, within that area.
So the story in this one's basically a couple crosses paths with Bigfoot while exploring the Northern California woods. Ironically enough, I believe Willow Creek was the sighting of the first ever famous, or maybe not the first ever, but the famous Bigfoot footage.
Yeah.
Or was that Bluff
Patterson
Creek?
Gimlin?
I always get Bluff Creek and Willow Creek confused because one of them took the famous Patterson Gimlin footage took place at one, and then one of the first ever reports was at the other, Bluff Creek, Willow Creek.
I know that Bobcat, when he was interviewed, he said he wanted to literally film it in the area where it had some Bigfoot lore.
Okay.
He's a big believer
Yeah.
in Bigfoot. And the Patterson Gimlin footage.
So one thing that's interesting, it says this may be controversial to have this movie ranked so highly, but you don't really see Bigfoot in the movie apparently. So I guess it leaves a lot to imagination. And as far as Bobcat Goldthwait, it says there's plenty of folks who hate him, who hate Bobcat Goldthwait foray into the horror genre, and it's difficult to argue with someone's dislike of a found footage film because I get it. Found footage films can be really bad. That being said, this is easily one of the best thanks to its increasingly tense narrative.
Yeah.
Truly likable protagonists and some legitimately frightening sequences. The tent scene is a masterpiece of single static shot terror, and while the ending leaves some viewers wanting more, it's both a harrowing and refreshing turn for the rest of us. So
It was one of those movies I remember early on. It's that human intervention that probably scares you the most. You know, they run into some, rough looking people that
There
it's
it
like,
is.
oh, this is not gonna go good.
You done found the
Yeah.
hill people.
Yeah.
Man.
So number 3, it's called Exists, and it came out in 2014. It's about a group of friends who cross paths with a Bigfoot in Texas, and they said that out of all the Bigfoot movies on this list, the actual Bigfoot in this movie is the second most realistic, right after Harry and the Hendersons.
Really?
Bigfoot, yeah. So they invested some time in a good costume in that one.
Not to be confused for the film Exits, which is about the people who make fire exit signs. It's a really boring movie. Yeah.
Number
Really?
2, Night of the Demon, 1980. How's that for a picture? It just looks like, yeah.
Dang.
It's not going to lift your spirits.
Is that spaghetti sauce?
I hope it's spaghetti sauce.
She's a messy eater.
Splattered all over the place.
Nice.
So it's about a college professor and his students cross paths with Bigfoot creature that they're looking for in the woods, but the truth behind its existence is even more disturbing. And
Well, that's actually sounds a lot like the plot for Black Lake.
Yeah.
Because there's a college professor in that.
There
too,
is.
and his students.
Yeah.
Yeah.
anyway, it's kind of a low budget film, and
But it got number 1.
number
two,
number
sorry.
two. Yeah, but it says it's got a strong ranking. I think this is actually R because there's some nudity. It's very gory. You get a little bit of everything in there.
Put it
Not
on.
one for the kids.
Not one for the children.
Number 1 came out in 2006. It's called Abominable,
Oh.
and that's not to be confused with the with the DreamWorks cartoon that came out a couple years back.
Kids, I rented Abominable.
Wrong one. No, but the for if you have young children and you're looking for something family friendly to watch, came out just a couple years ago. It's
Yeah.
called Abominable. It was great.
I've
Kind
seen
of
it with Gwen. It was great.
tearjerker ending. Really good. This one's not that. So the story is a wheelchair. Well, you'll be crying yourself to sleep. A wheelchair-bound man witnesses a Bigfoot creeping around while spying on his neighbors. Let's see. It's the monster's big and fierce and effective as heck, but there's no denying that he looks like a. I can't say that word.
A booger.
But
we
anyway,
found out, a booger.
Here's this critic's take on it, and then we'll wrap up the segment. It's one of the few Bigfoot movies that gets each element right, so it has fun mashing its rear window inspired plot into a creature feature with cool looking monsters at its center. There's gore, there's wisecracking, there's a legendary roster of supporting players, including Lance Henriksen, Jeffrey Combs, and Paul Gleason. The movie's also goofy at times, but folks looking for a fun, unassuming monster movie staring at rampaging Bigfoot can hardly do better, as it ticks all the boxes of a memorable, entertaining monster movie. I have to watch that one later.
Abominable?
Yeah, Abominable.
And that was number one.
Number one.
I would like to enter into the running.
You going to put a name in the hat here?
Bigfoot movie that I saw, and it could be argued it's not 100% Bigfoot movie, but it's got a lot of Bigfoot in it. It's called, I know Pat's favorite character actor, the one and only, the man with talk about abominable, the indomitable mustache of Sam Elliott.
Oh,
See? We got man crush. I have a man crush on that. Called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
and then the Bigfoot. Yeah.
Yeah. I watched this over a year ago. Actually, no, a little less than a year ago. With a friend of mine here in town named Al, who was a indie comic book creator and was looking for some inspiration for some monsters. I'm like, we should watch this. And it's about a man who's like a trained assassin who took out Hitler and they had to send him into the mountains. In this story, Bigfoot is neither kind nor gentle and is wrecking shop in the mountains, and they have to basically send him in to take out the Bigfoot. And it was a crazy movie, but it was actually really entertaining. I really recommend it.
I've seen that one on lists before. I haven't actually seen it yet.
Yeah, it's really entertaining. Yeah.
Just the name alone has to be the strangest movie title in history.
I was like, well, how did they? And they said they specifically wrote this movie for Sam Elliott in mind. When they came at him, they were like, we need you in this. This movie will not exist without you in it. So he's like, well, how can I say no to that? But yeah, The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then the Bigfoot.
Happy viewing, everybody. And this, with that, we'll ease into our main mystery of the day.
Here we go.
From the opulence and excess of Beverly Hills to luxurious destinations around the globe, it's time to rub shoulders with the privileged and successful among us, as Paranormal Dads now offers you a look into the paranormal lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Oscar-winning actor Nicolas Cage is the proud owner of a 9-foot pyramid mausoleum in New Orleans. The structure resides in St. Louis 1 Cemetery, the oldest cemetery in the Big Easy. Cage purchased 2 plots and had the tomb built in 2010 for his future funeral. It's inscribed with the Latin words Omnia ab uno, which means everything from one. Some say that Cage's love of voodoo motivated him to erect his tomb in the same ancient cemetery as Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen. The White Pyramid looks out of place among the centuries-old surrounding graves. Its only adornment is a line of lip prints apparently left by adoring fans. Up to now, Cage has remained silent about the purpose of the tomb. Some speculate it's a nod to his National Treasure movie franchise. Others think the pyramid is where the actor will regenerate his immortal self. The rumor around town is that Cage has considered himself cursed since owning the LaLaurie Mansion in the French Quarter for a short time, and he feels being next to Marie Laveau will free him. For the Paranormal Dads, I'm Pat, and this has been another Paranormal Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous.
And now it's time for the main mystery.
So here we go. the second installment of our Alaska series, getting us through the winter months, and we're gonna go to higher elevations this time around. The Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628 incident.
Oh,
Have you guys ever heard of this?
no.
Yes, I believe I've heard this or seen a bit of it on a documentary. UFO case, right?
Yeah. So Japan Airlines, also known as JAL, they had a flight coming in from Paris to Tokyo Narita Airport. I've been there, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
It's a huge place. Huge. November 17th, 1986. It's a Boeing 747 doing the Reykjavik, I believe that's in Iceland, to Anchorage, Alaska section of the flight. It's in command by Captain Kenju Terauchi, and he's a former fighter pilot with more than 10,000 hours of flight time. Wow. So
More comfortable in the air than he is on land.
yeah, so he's been around a little bit. Had a total crew of 3, Captain Terauchi and the co-pilot and the flight engineer. At 5 o'clock in the evening, the 747 is cruising, and the captain notices 2 crafts to his left and about 2,000 feet below them. At first, he thought they were military planes, but then things got a little weird after that. About 5:18 p.m., the 2 objects moved to a position about 500 feet in front of the JAL flight, and the 2 objects appeared to be producing heat, as the captain could actually feel the warmth of the objects glow. And they started to see some really bright lights up ahead of them, and that's when they kind of started going into air traffic control mode and contacting air traffic control. And the first officer radios them and says, do you have any traffic at our 11 o'clock position? So ATC asked them to repeat their transmission as it's become garbled. And that was a big thing about this case, is that there was a lot of interference in their radio.
Oh,
wow. JL or ATC says they don't have any traffic, and JL responds that they do have 2 objects ahead of them. And air traffic control says, well, can you tell us what kind of airplanes they are, but they couldn't tell them. All they could see was the light, and it was pretty bright too. I mean, if you're feeling the heat off it, it's pretty intense stuff. Air traffic control instructs them to keep an eye on the traffic and also request their altitude. Then the traffic begins to take a position on either side of the JAL flight. So it's kind of like one is off to the left and one is off to the right, and they're both still in front of them, but they're kind of splitting up now. And at that point, the JAL flight says they can see the two objects, but they report that they have nav lights and strobe lights that are yellow and white. And at about 5:23, the objects leave abruptly, just take off faster than they could believe, out of sight. And so at that point, the captain now notices a pale band of light that mirrors their altitude and speed and direction. So the onboard radar officer confirms that the object is in their 10 o'clock position now, and they report that to air traffic control, and they can't see anything. So it was not long after that they got a report from the military, who said that they were picking up something, but now it had moved behind them. And so the captain said that the traffic is quote unquote quite big, and by this time the pilots decide it's time to get away from the object, and they ask for a new heading. Later on, they reported that this thing being quite big was actually 4 times the size of an aircraft carrier.
In the air.
In the air.
Wow.
So,
And these guys are trained professionals. I mean, they're good at judging distance and size. That's what they do.
Yeah. So air traffic control approves the heading change to steer the JAL flight away from the object. And so the 747 makes a direction change. It also lowers their altitude down to about 31,000 feet. but the object manages to stay in formation with them, so it's just kind of shadowing them. And so finally, air traffic control says, okay, let's see let's take things up a notch. And so they advise the jet to make a full 360-degree turn to see what the UFO does.
Oh, wow.
So they're basically...
Make a ridiculous maneuver.
Show us your hand. Are you messing with us, or are you just, in the neighborhood? So they do a full 360, and the UFO follows them. At that point, the JAL Flight reports that they don't see the object any longer. However, the air traffic control at Elmendorf Air Force Base reports to Anchorage that the object is still following them, and air traffic control will notifies the airplane that these guys are still behind you. Anchorage asks the Air Force if they're going to scramble anyone to investigate, and the Air Force says we're looking into it right now. So Anchorage asked the JAL Flight if they would like military intervention, and Captain Terryucci denies the request. He was familiar with a similar case back in 1948. This was known as the Mantell UFO incident, in which a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot was killed in the crash of his P-51 Mustang when he was dispatched to investigate a UFO encounter another plane was having near Franklin, Kentucky. And so he didn't want anything to happen to any of the jets, and so he decided, no, we're going to handle this on our own. However, Anchorage wasn't just going to stop there. They instead sent a United Flight 69, which was in the area, and some other flights in the area towards the JAL Flight, in the hope that they can do further reconnaissance of the situation. I find that kind of funny. Yeah, I don't want any military help, but let's send this United Flight over there, see what they can do.
Civilian flights with people like, where are we going? We got to chase these UFOs down.
Now, apparently they didn't get too close. They were still like 20 kilometers away when they were making their observations. But they reported that they don't see anyone trailing the jet. And at this point, the UFO had vanished. And so Flight 1628 continues on to Anchorage and safely touches down at 6:20 p.m. So they finally made it home, or at least to the landing site, before they continue on to Tokyo. So the captain officially cites to the FAA that the subject was a UFO. And unfortunately, he also made some comments to some reporters in Japan when he got back. And the JAL grounds him for talking to the press and moved him to a desk job. Years later, he was reinstated. But
that's sad.
Yep.
He's just telling them the truth, telling them what he saw.
Yep.
And you get punished for telling the truth.
Yep. You made us look silly, and especially back in the 80s.
Yeah.
They were still like, only recently now that the government has been like, yeah, they're real. It's always been a point of ridicule.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'm surprised they approved him to do a full 360-degree turn. That's not normal.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
Even if you're
especially with a 747.
Oh yeah, that's a big circle. I mean, but can you imagine you're on a long flight, nonetheless, and you're going straight as a passenger? You know something's up if you're doing a full 360.
Are we turning around?
Yeah, why are we turning around?
Again and again? Oh, we're going in a full circle.
Yeah.
Well, this was actually a cargo flight, though. So there were just the three on board.
Gotcha.
But still.
Yeah. And my other thought is, like, how hot was that heat? If they can feel it through the window?
That's what I was thinking. It's like...
That's like radiation, you would think.
I mean, I guess sometimes you can kind of feel the sun. If you're driving into the sun, you can feel that coming through your windshield. Yeah. But that's some serious heat.
That's some serious heat. And the size of an aircraft carrier?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to get heat like from another car's headlight, right?
No.
So whatever this was, it wasn't just a light. It was like it was a proportion,
whatever.
Or a heat source
like you
of some
said,
kind.
like the hole it was tearing in the time-space continuum.
It was a flux capacitor.
Yeah.
1.21 gigawatts.
So, question though.
Yeah.
Did they see? They saw the light.
They saw the light.
How did they figure out the size of an aircraft carrier? Was that what they were getting off of radar?
They could just see like the silhouette of it.
Okay.
So they could tell
outline.
it was a solid object.
I see. Okay.
It was kind of blacking out what was in front of them.
I see.
But they could see the lights, and they could kind of see the silhouette of the object. And I've even seen pictures that they drew, and it was actually kind of like I'd describe it as a fat flying saucer. So it looked kind of like, your textbook flying saucer, except it was more oblong. It was more round.
Yeah.
And then it also had, kind of like the little dome you see of this flying saucers in the 50s. It had kind of a dome shape, but it was large and,
Wow.
and with the bright lights.
My gosh.
So the officials at the FAA, Alaska FAA, request from their superiors. So what do we tell the media? Who had latched onto the story? They were told by a senior FAA official, just tell them you're unaware of any such incident, and it was probably a stealth bomber, which was new to the skies back then in 1986.
Yeah,
They were just
brand new.
starting to show up. And then the next day, a vice admiral in Washington, D.C., who watched the radar data with the voice tapes, asked them not to talk about the incident with anyone until given the okay. So shortly thereafter, like in a matter of days, there was a presentation prepared by the FAA and given to the FBI, the CIA, and President Reagan's scientific study team. After the meeting, all in attendance were told the information in the meeting was secret and the meeting had never taken place.
There it is.
So this has come out, they've written books on this. There's been interviews, people coming out in the press who were present at these meetings, and this is what they said took place. The incident is also special in that it's the first UFO incident with recorded radar data.
Ah.
So,
Yep. Not just
that-
visual, but
yeah. So 3 months later, the FAA formally releases the results of their 3-month investigation. In March of 1987, they retracted the earlier FAA suggestions that air traffic controllers confirmed a UFO, and called the target following the plane was a split radar image. So whatever that is,
yeah. Yeah.
They also stated the FAA did not have enough material to confirm something was there, and although they accepted the descriptions by the crew, they said they were unable to support what they saw.
That's because it was swamp gas reflecting off a
Yeah.
flock of seagulls.
Exactly.
There's Bigfoot farts manifesting themselves in the upper atmospheres.
The funny thing is, 2 other UFO sightings were reported in Alaska right after that JAL encounter. The first was on January 29th, so this is like 2 months later. And that involved an Alaska Airlines aircraft. And the second one occurred a day after that one. That would have been on January 30th, involving a U.S. Air Force aerial refueling craft, a KC-135. So this is actually an Air Force plane reporting a UFO. Oh, wow. So,
Alaska's a weird place, man. Not just on the ground, but in the skies and the waters and the woods. It's a big place. A lot happening.
There's got to
lot
be
going on.
like just a ton of UFO sightings out there. There's just got to be.
yeah, and one of the things about this story they talk about, and I don't know if it kind of hurts the pilot's credibility. Apparently, he had made 2 other UFO reports prior to this one, so you start to wonder, oh, is this the guy who cries wolf? But he's obviously, dude had 10,000 hours of flight time. He was a military fighter pilot, trained observer. You would
That's
think
just
he
my
knows what
point.
he's doing.
Yeah. And I mean, in most recent news, there was when they came out last year now with the disclosure, and specifically regarding the Go Fast object, and then also what they call the other one, the Tic Tac,
The Tic Tac.
and the Go Fast. One of the guys, I think it was for the Go Fast, they were like the one that went under the water. They were like, "How often do you see this?" And he's like, "We've seen dozens of these things almost every day."
Yeah, you start to hear more and more of that coming out.
So it's like this guy having had multiple, it's not a shock, he's reported this before. It's probably full crap. Like, come on.
Well, the other thing to consider is Alaska, due to a low population, you got crystal clear dark skies, perfect for UFO viewing, and not only that, but to boot, you have a lot of these puddle jumper planes. A lot of the places in Alaska are so inaccessible you can't drive there.
Right.
So you have these private planes that can land on water. You got a lot of people flying, a lot of what do they call them, bush pilots?
Right.
Yeah.
Flying around. I guarantee you go to Alaska, talk to some of these pilots. A lot of them have seen weird things.
Oh, sure.
And many of the planes that fly through that area are not just going to Alaska. They're jumping over the polar cap. You know, they're coming from Europe to Asia or to the North America. And it's just you know, you got shipping lanes. It's kind of like an aerial lane that you got a lot of flights going through there.
Yeah. Like you guys were saying, like little to no light pollution, I would imagine,
Yeah.
in Alaska. Like very few cities.
It's a weird place, kind of magical. You know, I was there in 2007, I believe it was. A little family vacation, took a cruise ship, and
Oh, yeah.
you know, you'd stop at different harbors, different towns, do little excursions. But gosh, you talk about squatchy. Oh my God, it's just, you know, it's pretty, it's beautiful, but don't go off the beaten path.
Yeah.
How many people last episode we were talking go missing there? 60,000.
The past
60,000.
20 years, 60,000 people have gone missing in Alaska.
See, you know, just stay on the trails.
I mean, that's more than Bermuda Triangle.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a lot more.
Well, and this is all happening within what they call and Pat, you pointed this out, the
The Alaska Triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, next episode we'll have more of the same for the main mystery. We're going to keep this Alaska-themed main mystery coming at you for a few more episodes here, and I'll be up to bat next time around, so I'll round up something good there. But any other final thoughts to put this one to bed, guys?
I just love me some UFOs.
Yeah. Well, this one's cool because it's from, you know, a professional pilot, somebody who's up in the sky quite a bit, and that's why it really stood out to me as kind of an interesting UFO story.
Totally.
But
No.
hey, thank you for everybody who partakes in our social media content, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over that stuff. Join us at paranormaldads.com. And if you got any interesting UFO stories for us, reach out to us at paranormaldads@gmail.com.
Thank you to all of our friends over at freesounds.org for all the sound effects that you hear now, and also to premiumbeats.com for any cool music that you may have heard, our theme tune and all that. And I think, is that everything?
And thanks to everyone who bought a copy of my book.
Yes, the Sky Diaries.
Yeah, really
Yeah.
appreciate the support.
Did great. It's first week, and you know, it continues to do well. So congratulations.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it. We got a good little support group here of listeners, and our own tight knit community. So we appreciate you listening and being a supporter of the podcast, and we'll keep cranking out new episodes for you as often as we can.
Take care, everybody.
See ya.
So long.
I talked to Aaron briefly.
I'm done on
We
my
can talk more about this with the edit, but I've been like, hey man, we shouldn't let that thing die on the vine. We should try to pull something out of it.
DMT.
High as a kite. DMT. Say good night. DMT. Sleeping tight. DMT. Feeling all right.
All right. Need a drink?
Cheers, mates. This episode is sponsored by A&W Root Beer.
Zero sugar. All the fun. But no caffeine.
All right.